It's a retired clinic and fitness studio.
Hi, friends. Host Eric here, host of Talking with Famous People, and I'm in the room with a variety of people here this morning. It's quite exciting to see so many people around. I want to respond to this comment from 4 days ago by Master Human Video. Another thing that might be relevant to personality type and learning aptitudes is handedness. I'm a left-handed INFJ. Handedness impacts how the brain works.
That's the location.
We should go get it. For that matter, sex impacts how the brain works. Personality type might have us skew towards certain aptitudes and modes of thinking, but other factors are at play as well. Still a very interesting topic, though. I responded with, certainly many elements of one's ontology correlate with other elements in complicated ways, but type doesn't skew us. Rather, it is the nature of our skew which places us in a given set. Regardless of other factors, certain attentional expressions preclude concurrence with others or coincide proportionally or inversely, so, etc. For example, one can draw a picture and talk at the same time. They aren't exclusive. On the other hand, one cannot determine legitimacy by knowing one's own authentic feelings while at the same time determining legitimacy via removing subjective considerations in pursuit of objective fairness. It's perfect. One might do them in succession, but not concurrently. And to the extent a person prioritizes one avenue of thought in making a decision, he necessarily discounts the other. It is these relational mechanics that make the cognitive function model the largest framework. It's illocutionary in focus and relational in its mechanics in ways that allow one to parse out all other factors being argued as the expression of the one arguing. I'll make a video when I get the chance. This is that video. Good comment, thanks. And then he says, yeah, good point. Skew probably wasn't the best word choice. There's a little semantics play in there, but overall, I totally agree with what you're saying. One's type is essentially the foundation for perception, thought, learning, and behavior. But at the same time, if women are twice likely to be INFJs, it's clear sex differences in brain development have a significant role to play. I certainly don't see that role as all encompassing, just meaningful. After all, sex is perhaps more tightly linked to genetics and brain development. And at least in terms of IQ development, the Flynn effect seems to indicate that population health and nutrition impact intelligence like it does height and lifespan. So it's not entirely out of the question that it may influence type as well. Also, I get the feeling that handedness correlates with some MBTI types, but I could be wrong. In this case, however, I'm not fully convinced that the in utero hormone levels thought to determine handedness is a process distinct from the development of type. If lateral preference and personality type share a developmental process, the actual impact of handedness on type learning, etc., may be zero. I certainly don't know enough to say if this is anything other than a big complex mess, but it's interesting and potentially worth the video. I'll tune in if you make one. And despite what I said, I still agree that type, regardless of call it, the all-encompassing nature we approach the world with. I was just trying to account for differences in perceived logical ability between your INFJ guest and myself. That said, the INFJ box is large and diverse all by itself. Thanks for the reply and have a great weekend. First of all, I want to say that this guy's a great writer. He's a great writer in the sense that there are no mistakes. That's very rare. There are no stylistic mistakes, even. And he's very smart, really bright. So I like what he says about those things perhaps linking. I mean, I do believe that to some extent there are in utero factors that determine things like handedness and type. But yeah, I need that so badly. I desperately need that thing. Um, the the thing about type that I want to address that he agrees with, and that I just want to stress for all the viewers or anybody who's got questions about typology in general, is that you should understand type, according to my perspective anyway, about by understanding it as a configuration of cognitive functions. That the configuration of cognitive functions is one of a set number of possible configurations because of the way the cognitive functions relate to each other, not anything else. So, because there are a finite number of manners of attention that people can express their existence through, and because they always work in pairs in some sense, um, it's people express one of a set of possible configurations, and that's what we call type. What I've come to accept is that there's not really anything like subtype. There are varieties of display within a given type, and what was his name again? Master of Human Videos or something like that. Master Human Video. Um, he's right about INFJ. I believe INFJ to be one of the most diversely displaying types, and it's because it depends how the NI FE thing goes. If they're in an environment where FE rewards are afforded to good TI, they'll develop really good TI. If they're in an environment that FE rewards are afforded to strong NI, they'll forego the TI and they just use it to defend their NI, maybe get a little stronger in the SC as a consequence. By the way, everybody watching, the icons and views expressed by others in attendance in the room are their own. They do not represent Talking with Spanish people or me or anything like that. So, having said that, it just occurred to me that some people might be offended by Kestrel's racism or something. I don't know. If you are offended by it, that's fine. I get it. If you aren't,
what is Kestrel doing? Why is he doing this?
just to be ridiculous, I guess. I don't know.
He got banned from Facebook, and so now he's going to try and get banned from TwFP from the niceness coordinator.
Okay, Kestrel, she's going over my head. She's going to herself, and that doesn't leave me with a lot of room to wiggle there. Okay, so anyway, the point is that when we talk about type, a lot of times people are focused on type descriptions. Well, I sound more like this type, or I seem more like this type. Whereas it works better the other directionality. So you go, here's some behaviors, and I want to explain those behaviors by way of by using this cognitive function model. You'll find that you can explain behaviors consistently over time if you have the right cognitive function model, and that they'll be inconsistent if you don't. You'll always be able to find some way to explain something. So let's say Kim is an ISFJ, and no doubt. But let's say I mistakenly believed she were an ESFJ. I might talk about that FE active FE response towards the Christian Silva thing as an example of why she's an ESFJ. It would be an incorrect justification because she's not actually an ESFJ, but it would be consistent with the FE being in the 1-2 slot. So it's like when you start explaining your own behaviors or those of others, you'll find things that don't really fit well and that fit better with another thing. And then kind of everything sort of fits better with another thing. And then as you determine, okay, this person's actually this way. You can explain deviations from the standard norm of that type, which is the type description, mostly by environmental factors. Kimberly's got a lot more fight in her, I think, than a lot of ISFJs do. And I think it's because she's had to fight a lot more in life than a lot of ISFJs do. So that makes her a good match for me because she has a kind of fight that I just can't fight against. It's like she doesn't fight, let's have a debate. She just basically displays unsatisfiedness until the problem's resolved. So that makes us have very few pointless fights. That a lot of people have a lot of pointless fights because they're arguing about things they're never going to come to any sort of resolution about. And really, I don't normally do that. When I explain her behaviors, I explain them to myself. Understand she's an SI. My mic is shit. Okay.
There is something though that we do that people notice right off is our little bickery bantery thing we do.
Yeah. Is my mic better now?
I didn't realize that wasn't normal.
Is my microphone better? Good. Okay, so Kimberly points out that she and I bicker and banter quite a bit.
We have like a playful
bickering thing that goes on that other people think is kind of odd, or note anyway. So that's probably above typing. It's like that's not exactly a type thing for her and me. It's because we both have 8 in our Tritype, and I like to include Enneagram Tritype in my understanding of people as well because they seem to complement each other. Cognitive function type and Enneagram type seem to complement each other without creating any contradictions or running afoul of each other. Enneagram explains how people are configured emotionally, what kind of emotion they prioritize as the most important emotion to deal with, the negative emotions. And it says, Enneagram tells us that there are three basic core negative emotions: anger, fear, and shame, and that each person deals with other parties and deals with those emotions uh, according to certain strategies. So my Tritype is 7, 8, 4. That means my first emotion I deal with is fear, and my primary way of dealing with it is to ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist, the thing that I'm scared of. And the second Enneagram Tritype for me is 8, which means I deal with anger by being angry and by fighting things out. And my third is 4, which is individualism or being contrarian or being the iconoclastic type. And that's my way of dealing with shame. In other words, if instead of achieving to make other people believe my worth or being helpful, I am iconoclastic. I juxtapose myself against those norms. So that explains my sort of emotional positioning to the world, and the cognitive function typology model explains my added attentional configuration. When we talk about manners of attention, there are 3 kinds of manners of attention, or 4 kinds of manners of attention. Really, 4 kinds. There's action, epistemology, or knowing, deciding or evaluating, and interfacing. So your extroverted judging functions are your interfacing functions. They interface with either world systems or social systems. That's TE or FE. Your true judging functions are introverted feeling and introverted thinking, and they judge things according to either objective, non-subjective considerations, consistency with other known things, or subjectively based on your own feelings. And then there are 2 um, action functions, and those are extroverted intuition and extroverted sensing. You're either acting metaphysically in terms of language or symbolic representations of things, or you're acting physically in terms of things that aren't. And there are 2 epistemology functions or knowing functions. You either know from your own experience what you've learned, what's already happened to you, or you know from gleaning things that appear to be implicit to the world as rules of understanding them. So those attentional manners relate to each other in ways of exclusivity, proportionality, inverse proportionality, etc. This is something I go over fairly frequently in these videos because I believe it clarifies much of the confusion that people have about cognitive functions in general. It's like the reason things don't exactly work out when you try to figure it out in your head is because there's this mistaken belief that thinking, that extrovert thinking and introvert thinking are somehow both logical and both. I mean, they are both logical, but they're both logical in the same way, but they're not, and they're more like their other. They're like function than they are like the other version of it. So extroverted thinking is more similar in its ways of dealing with shit to extroverted feeling than it is to introverted thinking. And introverted thinking is more similar in ways of dealing with the shit to introverted feeling than it is to extroverted thinking. And and the reason is because there are 4 things that your attention has to do to be a fully realized human being. You have to know, you have to act, you have to judge, and you have to interface. And the interface function is a tricky one because it seems to have elements of lots of the other ones. Your extroverted thinking, your extroverted feeling, they have a put, get, receive quality to it. When you're putting information out there, you are saying stuff. It's kind of like extroverted intuition, and introverted thinking is creating information. You go, oh, extroverted feeling is how you put it out there. Getting stuff, when you're asking questions, is something that you might see as an introverted thinking thing. Well, I'm asking the next logical question. But how you're seeking it and why you're seeking it, that's going to be an extroverted feeling thing. And how you're positioning it and what it does with positioning, and that's extroverted feeling stuff. So, and then the receive is just is like the introvert's FE. Kestrel or Kimberly, they'll sit there and maybe just wait for me to say something or ask a question. But asking a question is getting, but just receiving is just waiting to see what else comes down the pike before drawing any conclusions. So those extroverted thinking and extroverted feeling functions can be easy to conflate with the other ones because they've got that put, get, receive quality. The thing is, what they're putting is already decided. what they're getting is stuff they don't know. What they're receiving is new information. So it's like between the other functions. It happens on this edge of time called the present in one sense, and then it manages its, but each of those things manages all of its equity across time. So they're the most split functions. They have the most across time metaphysical aspect. They have the most real time physical aspect. They're the most both subjective and objective of the functions because of the nature of their interactivity, even though they are respectively subjective for TE and objective for FE. Me, I slept my ass off.
I just have a question about introverted intuit.
Okay, ask away.
Why am I echoing? So I know it's like using the inward to create a map based on your intuition, not your experiences. But very much INTJs or NTJs in general appear to be, I guess, in the objective realm, which is more sensor oriented in the sense that they want to see proof and evidence. But then how does that differ from ISTJ or SI, proof and evidence, if you know what I mean?
Okay, well, that's a good point. Because you've got TE as a tool function, you're going to seem much more physically grounded because TE is the physical or subjective uh, interface function of thinking. So its logics are subjective. In other words, they're specific to the particular instances in which you interact with the world. You don't care about the generalization. You can do it well enough. In other words, you can universalize out rules and theories and schemata to apply to things in general, but you don't really see the point of it because you're a particularist in your tool functions orientation. You have a particular goal or thing that you're addressing that relates to FI, and it also relates to your TE, which is telling you how to address it. You're thinking across time, if I do this step, this step, this step, this step, what's going to happen? That's your TE using it. Your NI is directing you to the best course of steps to take from the TE perspective, and your NI and TE work together in this way to act upon systems in the world. As a consequence, you're blind to FE because you're not considering how the social systems interface with the world systems, because then it becomes too complex and you can't possibly process all that information. It's too many variables. So for TE tool users, they have FE blindness because they understand so well how the world systems operate and how to be efficient in those, especially with NI up front, because SITE, they get better and better over time by learning new tricks, learning things that work, and then sticking with those. Learning this next thing that works, and then sticking with that. Learning the next thing that works, then sticking with that. That's how SITE goes. But NITE is able to, well, the TE doesn't generalize or universalize. The NI does, because the NI is objective. So instead of gleaning from it, I know what works because I tried it that way. You glean from it, I know what works because now I see the underlying pattern of the system. I understand that, and so I can understand why it works and how it works, and that's lets you generalize out better. It also lets you intuit about more abstract things than ISTJ does. ISTJ is pretty practical and grounded in what they think about. They're really good with systems like my neighbor ISTJ, who's a postmaster. He's in charge of a bunch of mailmen and telling them where to go and making sure the packages get to the right place and stuff like that. TE with SI in front is great at that. As he learns more things at the post office, he internalizes those and puts them into his plans of action and becomes better and better at his job. It's a closed system, so he's excellent at figuring it out. For introverted intuition, they're better at open systems. So they can handle stuff like philosophy and debate and things like that. My INTJ girl, Grace, who won LD, she can handle debate, but she still can't handle it when she's thrown for something that she's not prepared for. She can't come up with answers on the fly. NTPs can, ENTPs especially. And ENTPs are best at that. It doesn't matter if you catch me off guard with something. I'll have an answer for it anyway somehow. I don't need to prep very much. INTJs need to prep, but when they do, they can be the absolute best, as Grace was in that tournament. She won.
I understand now more so because my only friend, who I think is one of the rare, INTJ females that I know, like I think I only know two really. She told me that she was always thought she was an ENTJ for a while, primarily because First of all, she has developed her SE from partaking in sport as a child, and she's also much more put together than maybe her fellow NT friends, in the sense that she cares more about looking good, and that would talk more to an SE aesthetic, or things such as like not giving two shits about giving her opinion and being very upfront about her opinion to people. But she's naturally more of an introverted, even though she really enjoys leading. Do you understand what I mean?
I do.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, you do see different types displaying quite differently at times, and
I love that.
that's great. Listen, I'm gonna bring this video to a close. I'm gonna go back to the person who wrote the original comment, Master Human Video. I really like that comment. I like the way you engaged with me there, and most of all, I'm impressed by the prose, which is fucking spot on. So, yeah, INFJs can have amazing TI and they can have shitty TI, and it depends on the INFJ. And that's, it's kind of true of ENTPs as well. ENTPs can have fairly shitty TI sometimes. It depends on the ENTP. Anyway, thanks for watching. Any other comments from anybody here that want to comment on anything? No? Okay. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese and etc.